Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's TDU Live. I am Mike Tanzillo. I'm the co-founder at TDU. So this week we're going to be talking about the film that got me into this industry in the first place, Finding Nemo. But first, I want to make a couple announcements. The first one is that we will not be doing the traditional TDU Live as you're seeing next week on next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we'll actually be doing a free online masterclass. It's a lighting masterclass in which we will be making some more TDU announcements for what's going to be happening at TDU in the future. If you're able to, so you can sign up for that. I'll add the link down below this video after this video has been posted, or you can wait when we will email out all the updates and everything. So we've got some fun, exciting stuff, and we really hope it's going to benefit all of you. But I will wait for that for next week. But this week is all about Finding Nemo. So I want to give you a little bit of a backstory. At the time that I saw Finding Nemo, or when it came out, I was when it came out on DVD, I was just finishing up college. I was an art major with a focus in photography. I was working some freelance photography jobs, and I kind of very much didn't enjoy that work experience at all. I was a little lost. I was actually bartending at nights at a Buco de Beppo restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, actually. Just to make ends meet, and I was waiting tables, and I just wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. And then Finding Nemo came out, and it wasn't actually the movie itself. It was this behind-the-scenes video that they showed, where they showed a bunch of artists scuba diving off the coast of Australia to get the look of the film. They wanted to differentiate between the area very, very close to the shores of Sydney versus very far away, and how the ocean looked and how they could use that. And for me, that blew me away. I didn't know that these artists existed. I didn't know that any of this was a thing. So I did some research, and I learned that they were called lighting artists, and I started teaching myself some things. And I started applying for jobs then, and I was way underqualified. And then I went back to graduate school. I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design and started applying for jobs again, and was slightly less underqualified for the positions. And I eventually got a job as a lighting technical assistant at Blue Sky Studios, where I've been for the last 10 years working on films. And and it's been an absolute dream come true. So I know that a lot of you are in this position, or you probably have films yourselves that have inspired you to chase at this career path. I would love to know about them. So either in the comments here or after the fact, if you could post them to the Facebook group and just let me know what movies inspired you, because I love these stories. And every time we do a TDU Live interview, I always ask the person, like, what's the movie that got you, that inspired you? What was your favorite movie as a kid? And it's just some of my favorite stories come out of that stuff. So without much further ado, we'll go ahead and start. Let me just do this real quick, make this big, make me little. And we'll go ahead and start talking about this. So this is the documentary that I was talking about. So this is the lighters. Again, this was probably 15 years ago, so it looked a lot cooler. Back in the day, this video has not aged well. But again, these are all just lighters and set designers and production designers at Pixar going through all these videos. And you can find this video on YouTube. This is called, let's see. Yeah, this one's just Making Nemo, I think is the name of this one. So when Finding Nemo first starts, I was kind of blown away from the beginning. Like the very opening shots and opening sequences just kind of hooked me. Because again, this was not far after Toy Story. This was long before advanced computing was able to make rendering easier. So an underwater film made sense. So there's not a lot of fur on characters underwater. That was very nice. So they needed to, but they still needed to hit the aesthetic of being underwater. And they couldn't just add a bunch of fluid effects to something and actually make it underwater. So we had to visualize what it's like to be underwater. And there's three major things to being underwater. There's these God rays that you'll see swimming throughout. There are these caustics that happen down in here. So you'll see them, especially down here. And then we've got the God rays coming in this way. And then the last one is just the amount of atmospheric or fall off or aerial perspective that you see underwater. So water clouds it a lot, and it's very, very dense. And so you're not going to see a lot of depth in the distance. You know, it's going to fall off very quickly. So with those three qualities, and then also having like particulates floating around out here, really, really help sell this underwater look. Now, one of the things that's really nice about this film is they use these very orange clownfish as the main characters to help bounce off this cool background. So it's like there's always like lots of cools and blues, and they really use the saturation of these these orange characters to really pop off. I'm not going to have the audio on in this because if I do, this part will make me very, very sad. But you can see in all of these shots, there's just caustic swimming through all of these. And there's a lot of movement, a lot of just constant, you just constantly feel the ocean moving on the set and on the surroundings. There's a couple really nice shots in this opening sequence. If I skip forward here, you can see as they go down in this cave. I really, really like these shots here as they kind of get tucked into this tunnel. This is just gorgeous. It's just like some simple rimming up of each one of these guys. You can kind of see each one of the individual ones. This is just a beautiful shot. And again, it just kind of feels endless. So we've got those characters there, but like it kind of just feels like it goes on forever. And then we've got this pocket of light where the characters are performing their dialogue, and then they themselves are dark over the light background. So again, this is just really, really cool stuff. We still got the light rays coming in. We've got their shadows hitting here so we can really feel them interacting with this space. And this is just a nice, because again, they're in shadow. We can't use light or value to contrast them from the background because again, they're a little bit dark. But what they're using is the warmer tones over the cooler tones to get that going. And then now this is the exact same set as we jump ahead just a few seconds here to where the bad thing happens. So this is like pretty much the same cut in time, but you can notice that the overall look is drastically different from what we just saw. So now it's much darker. It's much less like bright sky blue. Let's see if we can go back to, oh, not that one. Let's see where we, this guy. If we go back to this, you can see like this is much more happy blue versus when we cut to, again, the bad thing, and we've got more purples, more darks. Like this dark value down there is stronger than it was before. And a lot darker, a lot more darks, a lot more contrast to kind of push up this feeling of this bad thing that's about to happen. And this is one of my favorite cuts in films, this to this to this and out. Like I love just that like split second of where like you see him hit the ground and then like that's it, it cuts out. So it's boom, 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 out. I don't know, I think that's really cool. And then got some black frames here and then we open back up. And now it's nighttime. And this is very good use of, this is a very, very difficult thing to light. So we've got cool blues lighting a orange character. And what they're doing is they're using this blue light to, like, he's just lost all of his saturation. He's lost all of his life. Like his partner's gone. He thinks all of his eggs are gone. This is probably like the lowest point in his life. He's in darkness. And again, he's just lost, even here, like you would expect him to have a little bit of that orange color to him, but the artists have just like completely sucked that out of him. So, and then when he does find his egg, find Nemo down here, you can see that the egg has that orange color. It has that orange glow. It's like, that's his connection to his life. His life is now inside this thing because he's lost it himself. And I think that's a really beautiful use of that and beautiful image of that. And I just think that the kind of glowiness of this egg is really, really beautiful and just one of the things. And then this transitioning into the title sequence is really nice. So using that common shape to jump ahead to there. Now we've got, I want to go ahead to just a couple of the other iconic scenes in this movie that I really like. We've got the shark scene. So now we're still kind of out in the open ocean. So things are still pretty blue. Again, caustics down here. And they're using the caustics on the shark so we can really feel his size and his shape. And one of the things I should have mentioned too about Nemo and the fact that he's this orange character on the blue ocean is that he's really small, right? Like he isn't very big. And getting that orange color to pop off is very important. So if you have, and even Dory with her blue color, it's a much more saturated, punchy blue than we're going to get off this background. So that's going to be useful as well. I'll jump ahead here to when we're down below. And this is, again, a scary scene. We've got all these kind of greens and unnatural laboratory type colors, I like to call them. And they are really kind of in feeling of it being in this awkward space, a space that they're not comfortable in. Well, at least Nemo, or at least Nemo's dad's not comfortable in it, where Dory is just, she's all fine all the time. She's never going to stop being. But this is an example where we can see that everything else in the surroundings are green except for these fish that are the not food, I guess, for these sharks. So I think that's a really interesting color palette choice that they did here. Jump ahead just a little bit because there's one thing that happens that I think is really, really cool. It's right here. So again, this mask is such a point of interest. So again, they made that like kind of neon-y. And then the other story point that's really important is this red blood that pops up and it goes past his warm tones and just kind of, I just love this as it goes up into his nose. You know what? This happens quickly, so let's step through it. I want you just to watch his eyeballs here. This is such a cool little trick. So this is Bruce as like calm, natural Bruce. His eyes look human. They have a sclera, they have an iris, they have a pupil, they have little eye dings. He looks all happy. Everything looks great. But as we step forward here, pupil gets bigger, overtakes the iris. Oh man, that's good. And then it overtakes his entire eyeball. And all of a sudden, the second it gets big, he is now dead-eyed shark. He's no longer this kind of human, human character. He's just all fish-eating machine. And there he goes there. So that's one of the coolest little tricks I've seen in a film in a long time. And they just use these, although there's not a lot of eye-ding used in this film, you can see that they're using it here on these very black guys just to kind of get those to read. So you can see like where he's looking and you can read the eyes there as well. So that is that sequence again, really, really cool stuff. And then I wanted to talk about what I consider the smartest, where's that? I would say this is the smartest 15 seconds of animated frames you'll ever see in a film. And that is when they're down in the deep, deep ocean looking for the mask. So right now there's just dialogue going on, and Pixar got away with just having a black frame on screen for a little while. And I think this is really, really brilliant because in a time when you're working where every frame takes up render time and you don't know what to do, like just having this on your frame, so easy. I would highly recommend getting rid of just dialogue on a black frame if you can. The other thing that's really nice about this is that it's absolutely, it's usually the simplicity of this shape, and it's absolutely beautiful. This kind of glowy orb that exists here. And again, we still have the underwater feel because we have these little dots floating around, these little particulates kind of floating in the scene here. And I love them looking up at it. We can see the dings in their eyes, the reflections there, just like staring up at this thing. They're mesmerized. So much softness, so much glowiness, so much just like ease and calm, the way that everything is moving, the way that everything's behaving. And then the reveal of what we're about to see here is, again, just like really brilliant use of selective lighting. Like we just start to see the specularity on the teeth start to creep in. We don't even know what it is yet. And then yikes, like just all these sharp shapes and sharp lines and just like ping, ping, ping. We feel every tooth, and then just like a slight little bit of lip there. And then this, I just think this shot is just so beautifully lit. These couple shots here, like just so much fall off going across the back from here. You've got these glowy elements on his back. Again, we still feel that softness and that glow, but it's now transformed into, again, something much scarier and much more, I don't even know how to say it, much more foreign, much more alien. And again, they use that saturation of that mask here that we talked about in the last sequence to really get the characters to read, because we're flying past and boom, it just picks up. It just stands out across all the gray rocks. And then we go down this way, and I just love the comedic, almost flashlight type beam that's just flopping around and coming in and out. And they're using light here as a, like this is really cool because, again, we have zero animating. It's just Dory talking on a static background, but you have a sense of the attack happening off screen by the lights kind of pulsating there. And I just think that's really, really cool. And then these shots that you get on film sometimes, these like extreme close-ups of individual objects can be really tough because there's not a lot going on. But again, you have to animate lights. You have to make it feel like the surroundings are going on. Just so much cool stuff. And then this transition here of the super bright light into where he thinks he's dead, and all he is just kind of caught there. And then we're back into the soft, subtle. We've got these particles just kind of floating around again, and things are much more calm. So a really cool sequence there. A lot of, and again, we still have these like little highlights of light, but these teeth are a little bit softer. They're a little more controlled than they were at the beginning of the sequence. I'm gonna go through this one just because this is a fun little sequence of when he gets on the turtle's back here, and they're riding along the current, and just like the simplicity of the background of this one is really, really cool. And we don't really have too many objects. It's just like this abstract shape just going past here, but that's what allows us to feel the speed. Well, not just that. There's a couple things happening here. So we've got this abstract shape floating past. We've got like clouds of stuff also going past. And then we cut to this shot, you can see the caustics going over their backs too. And this is how we feel the speed. We don't actually need to send characters like screaming across and the camera screaming across. In reality, this could be pretty static and just kind of like moving along through the light. Like we just have these things, just the bubbles kind of floating forward. Again, the heavy atmospherics, the God rays, the caustics, and all this stuff kind of helping all this pop off forward. We got Nemo's orange color. But yeah, I just wanted to point this sequence out as just a really smart solution to feeling a vast environment. But because we're moving so fast, you don't really see it too much. And then I just want to quickly talk about the shark bait sequence here. So a nice little ease into this shot. We've got the dentist's office. We have some suggestions of this light coming across the room here and shining up over here, and a little bit of suggestion of the outside light here, but none of it is as bright as this fish tank. And this establishing shot is establishing that this is where the action is going to take in. So we pan into this, we start to zoom in, and now the next cuts we are inside the fish tank. So it's just like a simple way of drawing the eye there and drawing the camera there to go. Again, same thing here with kind of the caustic pattern. It's just like a little bit waving around there. And then just a cool little transition coming out of this hut. We've got a little bit of spot here on his face so we can read that shape. And then you can definitely feel him exiting that space, allowing him to catch much more light than these foreground objects. Because again, this is just kind of cutting him off so we can't see him. And then we've got this really neat path of light kind of coming down here. It's something that it's really, really beneficial when you're lighting a character moving towards something, to just give them a path, a trail to travel along, all while doing some shaping and having like all these animated motions of lights happening here on the side. The one thing about this sequence is that I don't feel like this is a lot of animated caustic stuff, but we don't feel it quite as much on the characters. They feel a little bit more static. There's a little bit of change on them, but it's not like all these guys don't feel quite as much of that movement of light as we would on the environment. We feel it a little bit, but not as much. I think that's probably an art directed decision, because I think like the extreme contrast changes might have been too much on them. So I think that was more of like just making sure we can read their faces and get an understanding of them the whole time. The other thing that's really nice about this sequence is there's a lot of depth of field. Let's go back a few frames here. You can see in this shot here, like this stuff is all out of focus, even here, pretty much everything but him back behind him. And again, if we're in a fish tank, we're only talking about a few inches, but because we're up close and because we want all this to feel a little bit smaller to make the audience remember that this is in a small enclosed space, it's really nice to have a lot of depth of field to communicate that. This is a nice lighting setup to create underlighting here up onto the character. So you can see when we punch in on these close-ups, there's just a lot of light coming up from underneath of them. So you can kind of feel that they're like, it's not creepy or sinister. It's like this is just like their little ritual. And it's meant to be very stern, and these guys are very tough in this moment. So having this underlight really helps them out. And underlighting doesn't always happen just naturally. You don't just do it. Like, you need some sort of motivation for that to happen. So this structure plays to that very nicely. And then having these ripples on top are also a really, really clever solution there. And then for the last sequence that I kind of want to go through, it's the just keep swimming one here at the end. This is when they're reconnected. So the one thing I want to point out is that we've got like a whole school of fish here, a lot of fish swimming around. And we're going to have a problem here where we want to be able to see them, but we also want them to fall back into the background. We don't want them to draw too much attention. So what these artists did, and I think this is really brilliant, is you can see that each one of them, their color allows them to blend with the background, but to get a feeling of the number and the quantity, again, you can see just this little bit of speck hit on every single one. So just pay attention to that as we're kind of going through these frames here, because again, we've got the God rays, we've got the caustic light, we've got his orange popping off, but like you can really feel the number of this school of fish just by like just this little bit of specular light. And again, the saturation of our hero characters is popping forward. But this, and I meant to mention this too. So this is right next to Sydney. So you can see that the ocean color is drastically different than when we were in the wide open ocean. Much greener, much darker, much less. It actually feels more like a lake than it does an ocean because of all like the local pollution and stuff by the ocean. So these shots of the boat are very interesting. So like this amount of water to render this back then was really, really difficult. So this was just like I can't imagine how long it took him to get just this shot of the water, but this is really a wow moment. So a couple things again to notice: specular on the fish, and then as we're going up here, and we start to see like larger quantities of them, and reading their saturation to pop off. And then the last one is these human characters around the ship. There's something that I noticed when I was preparing for this TDU Live that I thought was really interesting that I'd never noticed before. Like, here's a great example of just like this massive fish, and just like, again, we're not really picking up their individual forms, but we're getting an idea of how many there are by just like speck hit, like on every single one of them. And just very, very cool stuff. Let's see. This is a really interesting shot too. So this is these characters, we've never ever seen them before. This is like because they've always been wet, but they've been in a wet environment and they've been underwater. So it's a very different look, but now they're wet above the water and they're just like super shiny. And that's a very, very, again, a little bit of a difficult thing to achieve, is to have a wet shader for a character as well. But again, picking up the specs as they pull down, God rays, getting their spec back, like doing that switch between their wet on land material. Okay, so this is the thing that I noticed. These guys don't have faces. I don't know. I think that might be because they wanted to make them like less intimidating. I'm not sure why, but they basically made two characters that don't have faces as these guys on the ship. So just something to point out there. Never noticed that before. But again, we've got these greens. We've got the specular, the fish swimming down, the Stark shape, and then the cuts start happening quicker. And then once they spill out, again, just nothing but specular lights going everywhere. Really, really cool stuff. So again, this was the film that inspired me to do what I do and really changed my life. And I would love to hear what projects you guys worked on that changed your lives. And we're going to be doing more of these lighting breakdowns of films and looking at things. So if you guys have suggestions, I would love to look into them for you. And I see a thank you for breaking these down. Yeah, I agree. And I would love for these to start to become discussions. So as we go forward, we can do more questions in the comments section. And I would like to invite other people on, or maybe artists that worked on these projects. They can provide a little insight into how things are done. In the future, I can talk about films that I've worked on and give you guys a little background on that. But in the meantime, I just want you guys to keep going, keep lighting. Sign up for the webinar, for the free masterclass next Wednesday, and check that out. We'll have, again, some big announcements. We've got the lighting challenge going on in the lighting Facebook, the Facebook lighting community, and just more assets going out. We announced the Kit Bash 3D. We've got their Victorian entire city that's available for TDU students, and just a lot of good stuff going on. So we're really excited to work with you. We're really excited to keep going, and we can't wait for to see what amazing things you guys are going to become. All right, guys, talk to you soon. Thank you. You're very welcome. Super, super, super to you as well. All right, take care.